This is in reference to Cornel West and black voters. You know, the mainstream media pundits are starting to get really nervous. They are now saying that they are afraid that Cornel West will take the black vote away from the Democratic Party or hurt Joe Biden, because you know the Democratic Party cannot win without the black vote, right? So now they're starting to get really scared. So much to the point that even the Morning Joe pundits, what's her name? Mia? I forget her name. The Morning Joe pundits are going so far to actually blame Joe Biden's staff for his cognitive decline instead of blaming Joe Biden and basically saying, not blaming Joe Biden for cognitive decline, but blaming the fact that Joe Biden should not be in office right now. Instead of putting the blame on that and saying, yes, he's having these mental, breaks, these issues, he needs to resign because he's not fit to be leading the country right now. They're actually going to blame Joe Biden's staff. This is how desperate and how nervous they're starting to get because of the fact that they do realize that someone like Cornel West could appeal to a certain segment of the population. But I don't think it's just black voters. He appeals to a lot of people because of the policies that he's running on and the fact that he's been consistent so much through over the years. Listen to this, guys. It's now the staff's fault that Joe Biden is not doing well.
They also managed his schedule very carefully.
Yeah, I think his staff needs to own his age. I'm just going to be honest. I don't think they do a good job helping out the president. And I'm not talking about it like, I'm just saying, if you are managing a president's schedule and you are managing a president getting on stage and getting off stage and getting on planes and getting off planes, and yes, he's 80. You need to be there for him and you need to make a pathway. And you sure as hell better make sure he doesn't fall on a sandbag. And
let's just pause there before we get through the rest of it. You see the scapegoating? It's the staff's fault that Joe Biden doesn't know where he's at. It's the staff's fault that Joe Biden fell. It's the staff's fault that Joe Biden is, slurring his words sometimes. It's the staff's fault that Joe Biden is experiencing cognitive decline. You see how desperate they are getting? Because they are starting to realize that it is very much a real possibility that Joe Biden could lose re-election. That's how bad this is. This is how far they have gone.
I blame the staff for that. I mean, these are the things that are going to hurt him. These are things that are going to be played on a loop. Okay, let him do his job. Let him do his speeches. Let him work on policy. Let him do his connections in Congress, unlike any president that we've seen. I don't know, since Clinton. But my God, make sure, your Secret Service, you're his staff, that you were there and you're telling him what's next. And it's not because, don't take this as, oh, he can't even get from one place to another. When you're busy and you're on stage, and we've been on stage, right. I've done speeches and I'm so nervous. I'm doing the speech. I'm trying to get it right. And when it's done, I don't know which way to go. And I'm looking for direction.
Are they the president of the United States? I didn't think they were. They're not the president of the United States. Okay. There were other presidents of the United States before Joe Biden. We didn't see them have this type of confusion. Now, you got to remember where they come from. Okay. Remember, he was a Republican. Just keep this in mind. She, if I remember correctly, her family was already in the DC, DC inside. So she's a DC insider. Okay. Just keep that in mind, guys. These people are status quo. They're going to go against anything that's outside of the status quo. But you need to understand where they come from. You need to understand that these are wealthy people and that Mika already was a DC insider. You might as well say DNC as well, but she was already a DC insider. So just keep that in mind.
So do a better job, because you can't have these video images of the president tripping or the president like going the wrong way. It's not going to work in this presidency because his age is going to be a factor. His age is going to be a factor, and it's your job to make sure he gets from one place to another. He can handle the.
So they're supposed to come help him walk across the stage now? This is so pathetic. This is really bad. So they're supposed to, Red goes, is it the White House or retirement home? Thank you. What's happening here? Blaming the staff.
Presidency. You have to handle his schedule and where he goes.
Well, and the scheduling.
It makes me mad.
The scheduling,
the
scheduling is so important. You have with every president, you have different strengths, you have different weaknesses. If
So you guys can see what's already starting to happen, right? They're going to blame everybody else, even go so far as to not just blame other candidates, but they're also going to blame the staff, which is what's happening right now. Now, all of a sudden, it's the staff's fault. Typical status quo corporate mainstream media. Trying to do everything that they can to cover for Joe Biden. Now, why is that important? Why was it important that you saw that clip? The reason why they are flustered the way they were, at least she was so flustered, is because the writing is on the wall. There are two people primary challenging Joe Biden within the Democratic Party. Then you have Dr. West challenging Joe Biden outside the Democratic Party. And let's keep it real. If you look at the polls, the majority of Americans want a third party. They see Joe Biden's approval numbers and they realize he could actually lose this thing. Maybe the Democratic Party shouldn't have chosen Joe Biden. But now there is also another concern in reference to Cornel West, and that is African-American voters. I want you to hear this conversation on CNN between Aaron and former Mayor Bottoms from Atlanta and some other dude. I forgot his name. Sorry. But shout out to
I've done speeches and I'm so nervous. I'm doing the speech. I'm trying to get it right. And when it's done,
sorry,
I don't know which way to go. And
stop. Sorry. I'm sorry, guys. She came back. Shout out to Case Study QB for this clip.
Mayor Bottoms, you know, when you talk about the situation, obviously you've got Joe Manchin and Jonah mentioned RFK Jr., who's running in the primaries, but you've got a Green Party candidate who's going to be on that final ballot, right? I mean, that's the way it goes. The Green Party's a party. Cornel West. David Axelrod was saying he's worried about Cornel West. He believes that could cost Biden dearly, right?
That's the point. Like, you don't run against another politician to not do some type of damage towards them politically. Otherwise, you just might as well stay at home. That is the point. The point is not for Joe Biden to be reelected. That's why he has challengers. That's why people are like, well, no, he's not doing the job. We need a different path. We need a different moment. And that moment is now. So it's interesting to me the way that they discuss it. They discuss it as though it should just be a shoo-in because he's already the incumbent. He shouldn't have any challengers. There shouldn't be any debates, and that you should just give it to him because he's already in there, even though he's not the best person for the job. And that's not democracy, as much as they like to brag about the fact of protecting our democracy. Ain't no damn democracy in this country. Miss me with all of that. Look at how they rig things. But this idea that you're not supposed to do any type of damage to Joe Biden politically, you're supposed to go soft on him. That's the mentality that I believe is incredibly dangerous in this country. Just because someone is an incumbent does not mean they deserve a second shot. Let's go on.
Have to siphon off a few thousand votes in a few states. Do you worry that a progressive African-American candidate is going to appeal more to black voters who have been cooling to Biden in recent polls? We see it in recent polls. Support for Biden among African-Americans dropped from 84% in 2021. It's down to 56% earlier this year.
Pause. Everybody better wake up. I was trying to warn people about this, and people said, no, Sabrina, you're exaggerating. It's not that way. Look at this. In September 2021, Joe Biden's approval rating for African Americans is 84%. May of 2023, 56%. And it's not just that, but studies have shown that now there are Black men who are leaving the Democratic Party. And it's not just Black men, but they have the highest percentage leaving the Democratic Party right now. And they're going to the Republican Party. What does that tell you? The party doesn't do anything for you. Can't sit up here on this campaign trail, make all these promises to Black people, say you're going to do this, you're going to do that. I'm going to forgive those student loans for those of you who went to HBCUs and make under $125,000 again. Those days are gone where you can just continue to lie to us and say you're going to do things and then not do them, especially during a time when people were hurting economically because of the inflation. So they're scared. Let's go on.
I mean, that's a stunning plunge.
Yeah, I'm more concerned, Aaron, about African-American voters and voters in general staying at home than I am about a third-party candidate. It's not ideal.
And then this one right here, Mayor Kesheev Bottoms. She's more concerned, a former mayor, excuse me. She's more concerned about voters staying at home than she said she is a third-party candidate. Listen to this again. Listen to this again. Watch, because I'm going to tell you what she's really saying.
I'm more concerned, Aaron, about African-American voters and voters in general staying at home than I am about a third-party candidate.
What she's really telling you is she's worried about them staying at home because that means they're not voting for the Democratic Party. When she tells you she's not worried about the third-party candidate because she knows African-Americans are more likely to vote Democratic Party. So she wants you to come out and vote for the Democrats. Former mayor of Atlanta, how's the Democratic Party doing for Black people in Atlanta? How's that working out? What about the police shootings that happened when she was in office, when she was mayor of Atlanta? The police brutality cases, the videos that went viral under her leadership? What about the cop city? Again, this city, that's mainly Democrats in office. The mayor's a Democrat. Most of the people in city council are Democrat. And some of the Black city councilors voted in favor of cop city. So how's that working out? You see, even on the local level, if you go to some of these cities like Atlanta, where most of the people in the political positions are Democrats, they're not doing nothing for Black voters either. It's a big problem across the board.
Home than I am about a third-party candidate. It's not ideal. Obviously, every single vote will matter. But what we are seeing are voters are becoming increasingly unhappy with elected officials. That's not particular to President Biden. But again, I believe that when the policies are focused on in the midst of a campaign, when people are reminded of how the American Rescue Plan Fund sent money to cities in Atlanta. It stopped us from having to furlough city employees. It allowed us
to interview people in Atlanta and ask them how far that money actually went for them. Because if you talk to people about the American, Rescue Plan and all that jazz, that wasn't cutting it, boo. That wasn't cutting it. So here she is repeating the same, similar talking points that Ro Khanna has out here shilling for Joe Biden. How can you even make this statement right now, Kesheev Bottoms? How can you make this statement right now? How can you actually sit up there and defend the Democratic Party given what's happening in your own city right now, goddammit? When you got a $90 million cop city facility being built that was approved by corporations, that was funded by corporations, and where the Democratic Party jumped in line and signed on for it. How can you go to the people? How can you go to your constituents, Black constituents right now in Atlanta, and tell them to go out and vote for the Democratic Party? How can you do it with no shame? Unless you're looking for another political position. You're looking to be on someone's committee or something. Make it make sense.
money to cities in Atlanta. It stopped us from having to furlough city employees. It allowed us to do things that we otherwise wouldn't be able to do. When these type policies, I think, are put in front of the voters at the height of a campaign, I'm less concerned about a third-party candidate. Do I wish that there were not a third-party candidate? Certainly.
You heard that? Why does she wish there wasn't a third-party candidate? You see, this is what happens a lot of times. The Democratic Party, they'll pick African Americans like Kesheev and tell the people, look, there's someone there who represents you. She looks like you. She's going to fight for the African American community. That shit don't happen most of the time. They get in there, they rub elbows with other rich politicians who have been there for decades. They get cozy with donors and other corporations, and they end up being just like everybody else who came before them. And oftentimes I see a lot of Black folk fall for this over and over again and assume we fell for this with Obama and assume that because they look like us, that they're going to fight for us. Well, all skin folk are not kinfolk, boo. And if you haven't learned that from people like Barack Obama, I don't know what else to tell you. But they use them as a tool. People talk about white supremacy. White supremacy isn't just about white people. White supremacy can also be a part of institutions, a part of organizations. White supremacy is also a tool. And one of the most effective tools of white supremacy is to get Black people to turn on other Black people for a sense of power. And this is what they will do. They'll pick someone like her. They'll pick a Stacey Abrams. They picked a Barack Obama. They'll pick these people to fool you and trick you and to make you think you're actually getting somewhere. You're not getting anywhere. They'll get somewhere individually. Their pockets will get fatter. They'll get a political career that they dreamed for. But for the most part, on a community level, ain't nothing else happening for you, boo. One of the greatest tools of white supremacy is to get Black people to do it for you. That's Kesheev Bottoms. That was Barack Obama. That's just Stacey Abrams. Those people out there tap dancing for Jim Crow Joe, looking like the Peanut Man. It's a hot mess.
Cornel West has a lot of respect, not just in the African American community, but across the country. So do I wish that he were not a candidate? I certainly do, because we know.
That don't make no damn sense what she just said. Go back to it. She's going to say all these good things about Cornel West, but then she's going to tell you she doesn't want him to be a candidate.
A third-party candidate? Certainly. Cornel West has a lot of respect, not just in the African American community, but across the country. So do I wish that he were not a candidate? I certainly do, because we know that the margins will be thin, but I'm still very confident that President Biden will be reelected.
She just told you Dr. West has a lot of respect in the African American community. A lot of the things that Dr. West has done, he's a great person, but she wishes that he wasn't a candidate. How dumb does that sound? You got these buffoons out here tap dancing for Jim Crow Joe. That don't make no damn sense. These people are party loyalists. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. So-and-so is great. He's a champion. He fights for the people. He fights within the community. He's been great, but I sure as hell wish he wasn't a candidate. Instead, I really want you to vote for senile Crime Bill Joe, Jim Crow Joe. I want you to vote for him, the one who made promises to the Black community and lied to your face and gave you nothing. How dare you try to even consume or think about the possibility of voting for Dr. West, someone who's been out there fighting with the people when the cameras were not around, by the way. Someone who's been consistent his entire career, who's really been fighting for the people. Don't you dare go out there and vote for that person. Go fight for the old white man. Go vote for the old white man who lied to you, who's a segregationist. Go vote for him. That's how dumbfounded these people sound. So people like Kesheev Bottoms, putting them in office, they don't do us any justice. They don't do us any good. Don't come at me with, well, we do need representation. We need representation that's solid, that's based, and is not going to sell out the fucking people. That's the type of representation that we need. And if you come and you just got the skin color and you're not really trying to fight for the people, I'd rather you sit at home and we just not represented than to actually convince the American people, convince Black people that we got somebody in there fighting for us who is not. People like her. Now there's more. Because there is also this group called No Labels that is also considering running someone like a Joe Manchin. So in this conversation in CNN, and shout out to Case Study as well, they're bringing up both of them and why they're afraid that both of them could cause a problem for Joe Biden, as if Joe Biden is not supposed to have any type of challenge or is not supposed to have any types of problems. It's just supposed to be a cakewalk for senile Joe.
Is Joe Manchin considering a third-party run? I mean, the Democratic senator is not ruling it out as Manchin announces that he is going to New Hampshire for a No Labels conference. Listen to his explanation.
The most important thing is how do we help democracy do what it's supposed to do? How do we help the process, the political process that we have, do what it's supposed to do? That's to have common sense discussions to find out what the American people would like to see accomplished, not just basically the toxic atmosphere we have because of political parties. That's what I think about.
So you're not, are you ruling out a third-party bid?
Well, I've never ruled out anything or ruled in anything. This is just strictly a conference that we're having, common sense.
He's ruled in money. He's ruled in corporate money. He's always ruled in that. He makes a lot of money in the coal industry. He doesn't mention that part.
Back with Chris Wallace right at the buzzer there. Chris, what do you make of this consideration? I mean, David Axelrod recently warned that a third-party candidate could very well hurt President Biden's chances for re-election.
Well, you know,
see, again, the way they frame it, it could hurt Biden in re-election. Re-election is not promised to you. You don't get it just because you're there. You got to earn re-election. And this is the problem. And again, who they got doing? They got the Black woman here doing it, okay? You see what they do? Now here comes Chris Wallace. Let's get his opinion, because now all of a sudden we actually appreciate people like Chris Wallace and Liz Cheney. Now all of a sudden we're not against them anymore.
The buzzer there. Chris, what do you make of this consideration? I mean, David Axelrod recently warned that a third-party candidate could very well hurt President Biden's chances for re-election.
Well, you know, in the last segment, we were talking about Ronna McDaniel not giving a yes or no answer. We didn't get one from Joe Manchin either. Look, a third-party candidacy, and he's talking about doing it on the No Labels banner, potentially. You've got Cornel West talking about doing it in the Green Party. Remember, back in 2020, Joe Biden won some of these key swing states. I think it was Georgia by 11,000 votes, Arizona by 10,000 votes. If you get Joe Manchin on the ballot, if you get Cornel West on the ballot, and I think most people think that they would draw more votes from Biden than they would from Trump, then this is, it's a three-person race, a four-person race. This absolutely hurts Joe Biden and increases the chances for Donald Trump, if he's the Republican nominee, whoever the Republican nominee, of actually taking a lot of those swing states. So it's a very big.
Here they go again with this lie. I want to be very clear about this because people continue to get this wrong, and some of them are getting it wrong on purpose. The third-party voters, if there aren't third-party candidates, those people stay home. Those people, 2016, perfect example, the people who voted for Jill Stein, the people who voted for Gary Johnson. If those candidates weren't running and there weren't third-party voters, those people would have stayed at home. Those people don't in turn say, I'm going to support and vote for Hillary Clinton, or I'm going to vote for Donald Trump. That's not how it works. So when they say, well, this definitely would, it's going to pull votes away from Joe Biden. No, if you are a Biden supporter, you're going to go and vote for Joe Biden. Come on, make this make sense, people. If you're a Cornel West supporter, you're supporting Cornel West. If you are RFK Jr. supporter, you're supporting RFK Jr. But you see how they spin it? They're like, this is dangerous. You guys are going to get Donald Trump. Let's do a little bit of the math. Because if you take all of Gary Johnson's votes and you give it to Donald Trump, and you take Jill Stein's votes and give it to Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump still wins. So I don't know what to tell, it's just, I don't know what to say here. So this is the thing. You're bringing up Georgia. Even if there wasn't a third party candidate, I'd be shocked if Joe Biden won Georgia again. I would be shocked. Have you talked to people in Georgia? That was a one-off. You have to remember Georgia isn't blue. And for people saying, oh, Georgia is a swing state. No, I don't think so, bruh. I don't really think so. I think a lot of people came out. Stacey Abrams got non-voters registered to come out so that we would not keep Donald Trump. I think that's what aided in that. But that doesn't mean that's going to happen again. So let's stop. Just because this happened one time, that doesn't mean that Georgia is a swing state. Just keeping it real. But this is the narrative. This is how they're talking, you guys.
Of actually taking a lot of those swing states. So it's a very big deal. And if you're in the Biden White House, this has got to scare the heck out of you.
And I mean, to have the non-committal answer of it and not ruling anything out. If you're a strategist looking ahead, trying to figure out where to go from here, you want to nail down an answer so you can actually essentially do what you need to do to course correct if that's the case here.
If they were worried about course correction, they should have done that earlier. Yes, right? I don't think they thought that Joe Biden was going to be challenged. I think they thought that, well, no one's going to actually try to challenge Joe Biden right now. Now, Cornel West got a chance to respond about some of this criticism. He had an interview recently on CNN, and I want to take a look at that. Let's go through this. There's some interesting things that are mentioned here.
New reporting from CNN. The slow pace of President Biden's re-election campaign has caused some concern among some top Democrats and party donors. They were already a bit nervous because of the potential threat of a third-party candidate taking votes from Biden and potentially handing the election, they believe, to Donald Trump and therefore the keys to the White House for a second time. Joining me tonight is one of those third-party candidates, Dr. Cornel West. He is running for the Green Party's 2024 nomination. Good evening, Dr. West, and thank you for joining us here on The Source. I mean, what do you believe is your path to success?
Well, first, I just want to congratulate you on your show this week, and it's a blessing to be on your show. You're straight out of Plattsville, Alabama, the home of Wilson Pickett. So we got two grand ones out of Plattsville. But no, I don't talk so much about success in the narrow sense. I'm just trying to bear witness, Sister Caitlin. I'm trying to bear witness to the love and encourage and integrity that Irene and Clifton and Shiloh Baptist Church Black Panther Party put into me when I was shaped to be able to tell the truth about poor and working people, because neither party wants to tell the truth about poor and working people. You keep track of these strikes, the Hollywood workers, keep track of the strikes of the Teamsters against UPS, keep track of the strikes in Amazon and see where both Democrats and Republicans come down. Keep track of the cluster bombs abroad. Keep track of the plight of Palestinians. Both Democrats and Republicans on one side, and then there's a few of us on the other doing what? Keeping alive the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr., Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, Dorothy Day, and a host of others. So I'm just trying to speak the truth and pursue justice. I wish they would spend as much time focusing on the plight of poor and working people as they do focusing on the spoiler. I don't even like that category, since so many of folk who vote third party don't vote at all. What was it, 61%, I think, for Sister Jill, said they would not vote at all if they didn't vote for her. So
I told you. What did I tell you? I told you. That's why, it was really important that he said that on CNN, because they're one of the networks that continues to say that lie, that these third party voters would have supported Hillary or would have supported, Donald Trump. That's actually not the case. And the thing is, too, that I thought he mentioned that was really important is that I wish people would spend more time focusing on the working class, like the workers, like the strikes and things that are happening right now, instead of calling Dr. West a spoiler candidate. And he's 100% correct. And they're not spending time focused on that because they don't really care about the working class. They never did, never will. They are corporate. They are corrupt. Who owns CNN? Who are the shareholders? BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street Corporation. That's who they talk to. That's who they answer to. And they continue to protect the status quo. But he's right. That was a good way to kind of flip it and put the ball back in Caitlin's court and be like, shouldn't you be focusing on what working class people need and want in this country right now?
I think the Democratic Party and the Republican parties, this corporate duopoly, they stand in the way of focusing on poor and working people, both here and abroad. And that's all I'm doing in this campaign. Part of a moment in a movement.
I'm glad you brought up Jill Stein, because you know the counter argument here. Jill Stein's actually helping you with this run. And 7 years ago, when she was the Green Party candidate, Hillary Clinton's world blamed her in part for that loss. And Democrats are worried you're going to play that role this time around. So what do you say to people, to Democrats who are worried you'll tip the election for Donald Trump?
I would say they don't understand basic math. I'm sorry, guys, but that would be my response. They don't understand math.
When I just say that, it's simply not true. I mean, I have great respect. I have great respect for my dear brother Ralph Nader. I have great respect for Sister Jill Stein. I have great respect for my dear brother Jamu Baraka. Meaning what? Meaning that the Democratic Party is so unsocratic as well as undemocratic. I'm still upset because they didn't treat my dear brother Bernie right twice. But they're unsocratic. Examine yourself. Examine why it is you did not speak to the issues of poor and working people, and therefore you're lost. If you'd rather lose than really change and examine yourself, then you're going to have third parties popping up all over the place because people are suffering out here. You got mass incarceration. You got ghettos and hoods and barrios and reservations. You got 60% of our fellow citizens barely making it every month. And what's the discourse? We want to win the next election and we're concerned about the spoiler. Hey, I thought you were concerned about public life. I thought you were concerned about the quality of the life of citizens. And I speak as a Christian, which is the least of these, the 25th chapter of Matthew, the orphans, the widow, the fatherless, the motherless, the marginalized, the subjugated. That's my legacy. That's the legacy that I attempt to enact in my own fallible way as a cracked vessel.
Yeah, so
let's jump in here for just a second, because I want to say something in reference to the Hillary Clinton blame Jill Stein. Hillary Clinton also blamed Bernie Sanders, even though Bernie Sanders helped her, went across this country to help her try to get elected. She blamed him too. She blamed everyone but herself. Hillary Clinton didn't act like she cared about working class people. She didn't even campaign in the Rust Belt, right? Come on. Even her husband knew to do that. How do you think Bill Clinton was able to win the Rust Belt? Wake up. So it was everyone's fault except for Hillary Clinton. The reason why, what Dr. West just said about the people are not happy. No, people are not. And you are going to see more and more third parties pop up because people are so tired and done with this stupid system where you pick from a freaking donkey or elephant. People are tired of it. People are tired of the status quo. And I want to make, just a difference here about Hillary and Jill, about Hill and Jill. Jill Stein ran outside of the duopoly. Grassroots. Hillary Clinton ran in it. In a corporate campaign, was not grassroots. Taking money from Goldman Sachs, taking money from Big Pharma. That's what Hillary Clinton was doing. She was never there to be for the people. She's corporate, she's owned. She was bought and paid for decades ago, okay? Before she even met Bill Clinton. Let's keep it real. So the thing is that if you constantly continue to look past the working class people, to look past poor people, keep pretending like you don't see them and that you don't need them, eventually what happens is that people will check out of your party, people will check out of your system, and you will not get them to come out and support you. That's why they're trying to really garner that Gen Z vote, because they realize a lot of us that are millennials, some of the people that are Gen X, we're done. We're done. So you can't tell us to come back out and support this stuff again. You can't tell us to go donate to the duopoly again. We've had it. That's why they trying to go after the Gen Z population. Well, let's get our hands on them before they realize how poor they're going to be. Let's be real. Let's go back in.
You're saying essentially you think that Democrats, well, not just Democrats, but that they have the wrong message. If you're looking at this, at the election, it comes down to the wire. You're polling at, say, 2 or 3% in key battleground states. What do? Do you ultimately back President Biden like you did in 2020, or what would you do in that scenario, do you think?
Well, I mean, part of the challenge, my dear sister, is that, you got Trump. He's certainly a gangster, neo-fascist. He's, in many ways, promoting, if not promoting, that's too strong a word. But one effect of his work is to move toward a second civil war. With Biden, he's better in some ways on domestic issues, but he's leading us toward a third world war. So if we choose between the second civil war and the third world war, where are we? We're between a rock and a hard place. And that's where so many of us find ourselves, unable to really acknowledge the ways in which our system itself is just so toxic. The organized greed at the top, just hemorrhaging the best. The indifference, the levels of hatred and revenge. All I'm doing is saying is, hey, let us try another way that Fannie Lou Hamer already taught us, which is one of love and justice and community and solidarity with the least of these, and organizing and having strikes against organized greedy bosses, and then trying to somehow keep our democracy alive and dismantle the empire. See, I want to head the empire in order to dismantle it. We don't need 800 military units around the world. We don't need U.S. troops in over 100 countries. We need to be a nation among nations. We don't need to be the grand empire that every nation has to bow down to. I'm anti-empire, anti-imperialist in that sense, very much like Mark Twain and the most adorable American philosopher, William James.
I'm glad.
Let me jump in here for just a second about dismantling the empire. See, the status quo, the typical liberal, conservative as well, the corporate ones, they don't want a candidate that wants to dismantle the empire. They don't want anyone who's actually going to ruffle feathers. They want someone that can just slide in, sit in that chair in the Oval Office, and take direction and push from corporations and from the military-industrial complex. They don't want someone who's going to try to change the system. They want someone who's going to work within the system. And anytime you try to be that person, to change the system, they're going to smear you. They're going to do everything they can towards you. And I'll give you an example. Bernie Sanders did not run third party. Bernie Sanders, who's a registered independent, did not run as an independent. Bernie Sanders ran in the Democratic Party, and they did this to him. Anytime you come forward and you start talking about, we need to get rid of billionaires, we need to dismantle this, we need to do those types of things, we need to hit big pharma, like those things, they don't consider you a part of the status quo. So you see, even the people who ran within the party were still smeared if they go against the status quo. Now, let me tell you why that's important. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican. They want you to be a part of that status quo. If they were so concerned about the power going back in the hands of the Republican Party, just a couple of months ago, CNN and all these other little flunkies on this network were out there kissing Liz Cheney's ass. Let's all remember, okay? They were out there kissing up to Liz Cheney, and that was public, but it happens behind the doors too. They want status quo. They're not going to tell you that. But at the end of the day, they really don't care if it's a Republican or a Democrat, just as long as it's somebody who will come in there and keep things the same. Someone who's not going to try to push back against power. Someone who's going to just nod their head and do what they are told. That's what they want. Someone who agrees with corporatism. Doesn't matter if they're Democrat or Republican. They would have rather had Donald Trump instead of Bernie Sanders. They don't want to tell you that, but that's the reality of the situation. The D and the R is just to keep us divided. That's to create division among us. So we won't come together in reference to a class movement because we're divided over a red team and a blue team. When it comes to DC, when it comes to Congress, when it comes to the military industrial complex, there's bipartisanship when it comes to corporate money. There's bipartisanship when it comes to war. There's bipartisanship when it comes to greed. Every now and then they'll throw in a few social issues to keep us divided. They'll throw in the abortion issue. Without that, they really got nothing. Let's just keep it real. But at the end of the day, they agree with status quo above everything else. Let's go on.
I'm glad you brought up NATO because you tweeted earlier this week that you believe NATO is what provoked Russia into invading Ukraine. As you know, that is the argument President Putin makes and one that the U.S. forcefully rejects. You know, I know that you don't think the U.S. should be involved, but if you got elected, what would you accept in terms of a ceasefire in Ukraine?
Well, one, I've got my massive critiques of Putin, though. There's no doubt about it. But we're not talking about personalities here. We're talking about how the United States promised Gorbachev, towering statesman, that they would not move 1 inch toward Russia. And we end up right now 800 miles on the border of Russia. And we know.
Let's pause there for just a second, because this is a very important point. Notice what she did there. She tried to say those are Putin talking points. That was a way to try to smear Dr. West. Dr. West pushed back on that by saying, let's get out of the personalities and let's talk about the history of what happened and why NATO is an issue now. You see, that's how you take control of the conversation and you swing it back in your direction. I don't know how long Caitlin's been doing this. I don't know if she is a seasoned commentator, but Caitlin really kind of froze. She don't know how to handle that type of opposition during an interview. See, he took power back in his own hands by taking the personality out of it. And I'm going to educate you, Caitlin, about the history. That's important. And that was smart.
How empires behave, Sister Caitlin. If Russia had missiles in Mexico and Canada, the United States government would probably blow them to smithereens, because that's how empires behave. We had the same challenge in Cuba in 1962. So what we end up with a criminal invasion. And I know some of my left-wing comrades who know, oh, it's an invasion. Criminal invasion, but a criminal invasion provoked by the expansion of NATO, which is an instrument of U.S. global power. And we have to be able to conceive of a world when we look at China, when we look at Russia, when we look at Ethiopia, when we look at Haiti, when we look at Brazil, we got to see precious human beings rather than these competitive nation states that are trying to devour more profits, more land, and more territory. Can we conceive of such a world? Can we pursue such a world? I think we have to. What's at stake? The destruction of the species, the destruction of the planet, the destruction of democracies as we know it.
But
so we're cutting against the grain, but always with a smile.
Practically speaking, what would you accept in Ukraine? Like what? I mean, Trump claims he could fix it in 24 hours. What would that look like for you?
Notice the vocabulary, practically. Basically, this is her way of trying to tell you guys that, okay, well, if you're not in agreement with what the Biden administration is doing in reference to Ukraine, then what other idea you believe in your head is not practical? Let's go on.
Oh, what I would do, I would bring in the Chinese, the Turks, the African rulers. I would sit down with the Ukrainian leaders and say, we must stop this war, stop these war crimes, the cluster bombs on a variety of different parties, and make sure that we begin a diplomatic process for a just peace. And that just peace is going to have some serious concessions across the board. Russian troops have to leave. There's going to be debates over the territory. There's going to be some kind of concessions over the territory, but stop the killing. Why? Because the Ukrainian brothers and sisters are precious, and they are bearing so much of the suffering with this proxy war between the American empire and the Russian Federation. So there's responsibility and blame across the board, but the American empire does bear a significant responsibility here, even though there's not the sole or exclusive responsibility, and it's in no way a pro-Putin. People say, oh, you must be siding with Putin. No, please. No, not at all. I'm trying to be morally consistent. I want to be a person that has some integrity and honesty and critique, self-critique and critique of others in the spirit of fallibility.
Okay.
I don't think CNN was expecting to get that, because nobody else is going to say it that way. Have integrity. He gave you the history breakdown of what happened there. He told you what he would do. I mean, what could she really push back on? So the thing is that, you know, again, I don't know if Caitlin's a seasoned commentator or what, or any other kind of thing. But the entire time during this interview, you notice she had this look on her face as though this is not something she was excited about, that she didn't really want to do it. Maybe that's just her face. I don't know. But what you have to understand is that the fact that Cornel West is running third party and he's getting this mainstream media attention just proves what we were saying before at RBN, that if you had a big name that ran third party, they would get mainstream media coverage. And he received mainstream media coverage the week that he announced. Some people don't even get that if they run it within the two-party system. So the thing is, that takes away that narrative that third-party candidates are not going to get any attention or any coverage. Take that away. It takes away the narrative that, well, people aren't going to be focused on the campaign because it's not getting attention. It's getting a lot of attention. They're talking about Cornel West almost every day. And that's what I think a lot of people, if you're not paying attention, case study be clipping these clips, cases clipping them. They're talking about him almost every day. They realize, holy shit, now there's someone who's running third party that a lot of people know. This actually could be a problem here. They're realizing this now. This could have happened if Jesse Ventura had ran in 2020. Times are changing, and they need to change. I think Dr. West did a really great job. Let me make sure I finish this out here, and I'll tell you what I think.
Okay, but you said serious concessions across the board. We'll have more questions on that next time we have you on. Dr. Cornel West, thank you for joining us here tonight.
What I want you to take away from this moment right now, we may never have this again, I don't know. So let's embrace. What I want you to take away from this is the fact that at the end of the day, it is not about Democrat or Republican, it's about status quo. And they want to protect that. And even Bernie Sanders at the end of the day was actually okay with that too. And that's why he endorsed Joe Biden. Not everybody is going to be brave enough to do what Dr. West is doing. Dr. West don't have to do this. But be real. Dr. West does not have to do this right now. He can retire, go sit on a beach and sip a Mai Tai. He don't have to be out there campaigning and doing interviews and running. He's doing so because he sees there's a need. Something has to change in this country. The narrative has to change. You start with the media first. Same thing with RFK Jr. I don't agree with him on this Israel-Palestine stuff. I don't agree with him on a couple other issues too. But same thing with him. He don't have to be doing this either. He really don't. He don't even need this. He also could be on an island somewhere sipping a Mai Tai. Maybe Dr. West and RFK Jr. could do this together. I don't know. All I'm saying is it takes a lot to come forward and to be able to make that sacrifice when you know you don't have to do it. That takes a lot. But they're all corporate. And the same liberals, by the way, in the Democratic Party who tell you you should not vote Republican, you should not vote third party, don't vote independent, and only vote for the Democratic Party, especially if you're African American, you need to be asking yourself, why the hell are you telling me what to do? Why are they fear-mongering you? Why are they trying to keep you trapped in the same system that keeps you where you are? And it's funny to me, they'll say things like, I care about, the plight of Black Americans. I care about equality. I care about Black people having financial success as well. but they keep you in a party full of politicians that prevent you from having that. They keep you in a party that keeps you exactly where you are, and sometimes actually makes things a little bit worse for you if you want to keep it real. Nothing has changed. And this is why we need to talk about this. We talk about changes in reference to the African American community. If we keep doing the same stuff, what do you expect to happen? There is no change for us because we continue to support this party that has done nothing for us. Or some has even destroyed African American communities. I told you, Cop City, Atlanta, all Democrats running the damn city. So if they really care and really feel and believe that Black people should be elevated financially and should be able to have those gains as well, they wouldn't keep you in the status quo. If Fred Hampton and MLK and Malcolm X were alive today, some of those same people who like to quote them on CNN and MSNBC today, they would be smearing them the same way they smear people like Dr. West. Let's keep it real. They wouldn't be praising Fred Hampton. They would be warning you about Fred Hampton. They would tell you that Fred Hampton is a dangerous person. They would say he's fringe and chaotic. Those two words they like to use so much. Think about that. If Malcolm X were alive today, they'd say the same thing. These people would not be, yeah, Malcolm X is right. No, because he was talking about them. Fred Hampton was out here, if he was alive today, out here feeding and clothing people in his community, mainstream media would not be covering that shit. They would be covering the so-called militant side of the Black Panther Party that we were taught about in schools, and the mutual aid aspect was left out of the textbooks, okay? They would talk about that. They would exaggerate it, and they would smear Fred Hampton. They wouldn't tell you to support him or back him or applaud what he's doing. He was not status quo. And anything outside of that, that's what they do. And that's what I want you to understand. Now, those three people, MLK, Malcolm X, Fred Hampton, they were not politicians, but they were against the status quo. Revolutionary leaders that they killed. And they killed them because they went against the status quo. Once the revolutionary leaders were gone, the Black community was swallowed up into neoliberalism in the Democratic Party. We were convinced that the way forward was going to be to vote blue. And we ain't seen no revolutionary leaders come forward since. So they killed the revolutionary voice. They killed the leaders. They killed the movement. And they pushed us right in the status quo. I say, I think it's time to break away from the status quo. Time to leave, folks. It's time to leave. Thank you for the super chat, Dirt Star Master. Sabby 2024 US. I would never run for office. Thank you, Bryce. Joe looks like Krang from Ninja Turtles. Oh, no, Bryce. Joe looks like Krang from Ninja Turtles. That's rough. Thanks, Courtney. Is the White House or a retirement home? Neither. It's the nation's most popular crack house. Damn. Tamisha, Dr. Cornel West is a very smart man. I really think this is a wake-up call for many of us. Thank you, Susan. Loved your rant the other night. You rock. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, North Instead. So tired of the could take votes away from Biden argument. Many people had already decided they were not going to vote for Joe long before anyone else ever announced they were running. Yep. That was me. Thank you, Mysterio. Great show, Sabby. Informative and entertaining. Chef's kiss. Thank you, Mysterio. P. Wayne Smith. A handful of counties in Georgia are solid blue. The rest are solid red. But it's swinging all right. Thank you, Solomon. Thank you, Sabrina. Excellent job. Pup. Thank you, LPA Films. Detected no damn lies from Dr. West. I wonder how long will CNN allow him to talk freely before they start trying to really attack him. Well, CNN, I think, has new management now, too. So that's a whole, I don't know what they're trying to do over there now. Thank you, Blunts and Otters. When superdelegates stole states from Bernie, they said nothing. But when people voted third party, they absolutely lost it. Make it make sense. Thank you, Tamisha. I truly love and resonate with your position on politics, and you almost sound like MC Light, which I appreciate even more. You rock. Thank you so much, Tamisha. I remember MC Light. That's back in the day. Thank you for the super chat, DC. Why didn't West challenge her assertion that he backed Joe Biden in 2020? He did support Joe Biden in 2020. He said he came to terms. We talked about that when he came onto my show. He does say that he was wrong about Joe Biden, though. So in the end, he did say, well, we don't want Trump. So thank you, David. Cornel West needs to say both Biden and Trump are fascists, two sides of the same coin. Choosing between them makes no difference. Therefore, go West. That's true. I hear you, David. And thank you, Rob. I love this. There's a hybrid revolution slowly and quietly going on, and y'all are right in the middle of it. Peace. Thank you so much, Rob.